Okay, welcome back for part two of the lecture. Let's pick up where we left off. We just saw a huge issue with the national bank, so we begin to see, or continue to see, a lack of unity in the United States. The bank was one example. We saw it with the Bill of Rights between the Federalists and Anti-Federalists, and we're going to start to see political groups form and people to take sides. Okay, we start we saw that with Federalists and Anti-Federalists, but we're going to move and they're going to start to get new names, and this is where we get kind of confused when it comes to political parties. But Hamilton's plan had stabilized national credit, but it went against states' rights. Okay, this is an idea that is still held strongly by many. It's the way the Articles of Confederation were ran. So some states think states should have all the power. Some states or people think the federal government should have more power. Um, and this is going to create permanent opposition in the United States. And the founding fathers really didn't expect this because they thought opposition to the central government just seemed disloyal. Um, and we're going to see two political parties form: the Democratic Republicans. Some of their supporters are Jefferson, Madison. They're usually pro-French. Um, Southerners, poor farmers usually, and the Federalists, which are Hamilton. They're usually pro-British, merchants, wealthy, usually in the cities. Um, and this two-party system has survived in the United States since 1792. So we have these two political groups that have formed, the Democratic Republicans and the Federalists. And actually that's going to strengthen democracy. Competing groups are good. It keeps people honest. It gives people something to fight for. So that's actually a good thing, but the Founding Fathers didn't foresee it. But we're going to continue to see these heads butt as we go on in our history. At the beginning of our country, there's a lot of economic, internal, domestic, and foreign things that we need to deal with, and especially Washington needs to deal with as the first president. One of the big things that's going on at this time is the French Revolution. Some revolutionists are fighting for a more democratic system of government, and then we have France, who's trying to stop that, obviously, because they don't want to lose control. Um, Americans see that as a problem because we've signed the Franco-American Alliance in 1778 after the war, and it's still in effect. It's a lifetime alliance, and it says that we are going to, because not only is there the French Revolution, but France is also at war with Britain, and this is where the Franco Alliance comes into play. So we're supposed to protect the French West Indies from any attack, which at this point happens to be the British. Well, the problem is we need the British commerce in America so that Hamilton's system can continue to work and thrive. Um, but also, we have the French Revolution, and we have this idea of people fighting for liberties and freedoms, and it's something that we fought for and we understand as a people. So we have individuals like Jefferson and the Democratic Republicans who are pro-French, but they're pro-revolutionist as well, so they want the revolutionaries to win. Um, and we have people in the Democratic Republican Party who want France to win as a nation, not as anything else. And then we have these do we support Britain, do we support France in their war with each other? And we have Democratic Republicans who want to support France because we feel like we owe them our freedom, which we do. And we have Federalists who want to support the British because we need them for trade, we need them for commerce. And so we have this big issue. So we're going to use this, or Washington's going to use this strategy of delay. If our new nation can stay out of European wars for a few decades, it would be big enough, right, population-wise, and strong enough, monetarily, militarily, to be successful. So Washington's going to implement this strategy of delay, as well as a couple of the other early presidents. So to implement the strategy of delay, Washington actually signs the Neutrality Proclamation of 1793, and what it says is that we're going to remain neutral in all global conflict. Thomas Jefferson actually resigns in protest of this. It pretty much says states in America will officially be neutral in the conflict. It's going to warn American citizens to be impartial. They're not supposed to pick a side. And the results are that, remember, we had this Franco-American alliance, so we break it. This proves that our self-interest is the cement for alliances. Really, um, as far as the alliance helps me, is how I'll follow it, and the Americans don't see this as helping them, so they break it. Hamilton's hope for economic development did depend on trade with Britain, so we need those ports to be open to American shippers, and they would have closed them if we supported the French. So under Washington, we signed two major treaties, the first of these being the Jay Treaty of 1794. Chief Justice John Jay was sent by Washington to negotiate with the British and end their practice of seizing American ships and impressment of American soldiers onto the British Navy. What that meant is they would stop an American ship. It could just be a normal trading ship, and they would take American citizens and force them to be in the British Navy. The British did agree to remove their forts on the American western frontier, but made no guarantees that these seizures and impressment of soldiers or American sailors would end. So this treaty is really narrowly accepted in the Senate, and it's going to revitalize the Democratic Republican Party, and it's going to anger a lot of people in the South because farmers had really been trading freely, especially with the French West Indies during the Neutrality Proclamation. So it's going to really anger us as a nation towards Britain, and it's going to revitalize support for France, which the Democratic Republicans had supported, so that's why we see this revitalization of that party. The second major treaty is Pinckney's Treaty of 1795. This is a treaty between America and Spain. Thomas Pinckney is the American ambassador to Spain, and Spain kind of sees these hostilities between Britain and the United States diminishing, and so they want to have good relations as well. So what they're going to do is end the hostility. Remember, we had been fighting over the border of Florida. We'd been fighting over control of the Mississippi. These are big deals for the United States, so Spain knows that. So they know that they have a bargaining chip. So they end hostility on the Mississippi. They give us free trade routes up and down the Mississippi, especially the mouth of the Mississippi in New Orleans, which is that huge trading port. They're also going to allow us to store goods in warehouses in New Orleans, and we're not going to have to pay to trade. Okay, so we don't have to pay Spain to trade, which is awesome. It's also going to grant and settle that border dispute with Florida, and it's going to say the 31st parallel is the border of Florida, and it's going to allow for us to expand not only into Florida a little bit, but also west, okay, because we're not fighting with Spain as well. And Spain is decreasing as a world power at this point in time. So they've slowly been diminishing from their point of world exploring power to now they're slowly coming down. Some of the key points of this treaty are these treaties are both going to ensure that America is going to stay out of European war and stay neutral in the future because they help us grow economically, which is the second point. Okay, these treaties help us tremendously when it comes to our economics and making sure we're stable as a nation for growth. So Washington's presidency is coming to a close, not because he couldn't have been reelected to a third term, or even more than that, but because he chose to step down after 2 terms, really setting the precedent for everyone up until FDR. And then we have the, obviously, amendment to the Constitution, which limits us to 2 terms. Some of his legacy as a president, what did he do? Well, one, he established a solid central government. He showed us this with the Whiskey Rebellion. He showed that the central government was going to be strong and put down any uprisings from mobs and protests to the government. Number 2, the West was expanding. We have this with the Treaty of Grenville, but still about only 5% of American population lives west of the Alleghenies. But we're moving there, especially Kentucky, Tennessee areas. 3, merchant ships are on the seas. Okay, so commerce is growing. We are now trading with other nations, which is huge. We are making money selling our goods and our agricultural products. And number 4, in his farewell address, he really hits on this, but number 4, he kept the nation out of war. and this is going to become our foreign policy for quite a while. Some of the things, his farewell address is extremely important, and you'll probably see it on the AP test. Some of the things he talks about in his farewell address are maintaining national unity, even though we have this discord and disputing among people. We saw the Federalist and Democratic Republicans, so keeping national unity among that. Obeying and supporting the principles and authority of the Constitution. He really emphasizes that. He warns of the dangers inherent in creating political parties, even though we know that political parties kind of strengthen democracy at this point in time. And the most important thing that he warns against is staying out of foreign conflict. Okay, so this policy of neutrality, and he warns against making long-term military alliances with other nations. He is all for economic alliances, though. So now on to President number 2. John Adams is the second President of the United States. He is from New England, so different than George Washington, obviously. He's pro-British. His vice president is going to be Thomas Jefferson, who is pro-French in the South. So we see in the White House, heads are going to butt. Some of the bad news for John Adams is, one, he has to follow George Washington, so he has to fill some pretty big shoes. Two, he hates Hamilton. And number 3, we are on the verge of war with France. So we're pretty much on the verge of war with France. One of the reasons is because after reading Jay's Treaty, they realize how pro-British the Federalists had been, and that angers them. So they start attacking our ships, and in an effort to stop that, in an effort to make peace, John Adams sends 3 individuals. This becomes known as the XYZ affair. He sends 3 representatives to negotiate with France for lost American goods and peace. France wants a bribe, really, to talk, but America refuses to pay just to talk. They want $250,000 just to talk and negotiate on peace terms. So Congress's response to this is they enforce an embargo with the French or against French goods. War efforts are pushed along, and that's going to cost money for us, so we're building up an army, a navy, and the result is America is fighting an undeclared war with France, and we do that from 1798 to 1800. So after that fails, the XYZ fails, Adams 2 years later is going to send more representatives to negotiate peace. This becomes known as the Convention of 1800, and by this time Napoleon Bonaparte had become a dictator in France, and he really wants to conquer Europe. He wants to become an empire, much like Rome had been. So he really wants to rid himself of this American problem, so he agrees to peace. This is really going to lead to ending that Franco-American alliance, which had really been just an inconvenience for 22 years, because neither side really had listened to it. And the U.S. had to pay damage claims to the American shippers. The French weren't going to do that. But it's also going to lead to this quasi-war, or this really undeclared war with France, over the next few years. So how is this going to affect us domestically? The anti-French Federalists under Adams are becoming more and more powerful, and they're going to try and restrict the power of the pro-French immigrants and the Democratic Republican Party. At this time, a decent amount of French are immigrating into the United States. Okay, so 3 ways they do that. One is the Naturalization Act, which is residence requirements are raised. So if you want to become a resident of the United States, they're raised from being here 5 years to 14 years to become a citizen, and you need to be a citizen to vote. So they're pretty much limiting these French immigrants from becoming powerful in the political realm for a few more years. Number 2 is the Alien Act. This permits the president to order the imprisonment or deportation of non-citizens, specifically French, in any time of hostilities. So this is going to give Adams an out, okay? Get out of our country. You are pro-French, and we are in times of hostility with them. And number 3, the Sedition Act. This is going to prevent written attacks on Congress or the president. So this is really limiting our freedom of speech, and the freedom of press is taken away. That's a violation of the First Amendment. That's going to lead to states saying this is unconstitutional, and we have the Kentucky resolution and the Virginia resolution, which you can take a look at here.